Hello, I'm Joseph Dillard, and welcome to the Integral Deep Listening Video Curricula. When an IDL dream or life issue interview is read back as the subject's own words, instead of those of the interviewed character, the subject hears statements that are authentic and true for them at a deeper level, which helps them to internalize and value what has been said. This reading back can therefore be a very impressive and meaningful experience. While reading back extends the interview, the session perhaps by 10 or 15 minutes, I have never had it not be a very meaningful and worthwhile experience for the subject. During the interview, the identity of the subject is split between that of the interviewed perspective, with which they are identified or merged, and their objective witnessing self, which observes the interaction between the question asking and the answers given. This relationship exists even when you are interviewing yourself. When you read back an interview, you just read back the answers, but they're reframed. After the interview, the interviewed subject hears what was said by the interviewed character with different ears because they are now taking a different perspective in relationship to the interview. A sense of validity, truth, and resonance is generally experienced by the subject. We begin, as always, by asking the following. What are 3 fundamental life issues that you are dealing with now in your life? Nedra, who is the subject, responds, health, career, communication. Question. Tell me a dream you remember. It can be an old one, a repetitive one, a nightmare, or one that you're sure you understand. Answer. First, I was the observer. I was looking at flying objects that were coming. Then I became myself. It was a very sophisticated airplane that landed. Very tall, non-emotional people that reminded me of Nazis that came from outer space. I thought, this is it. We are powerless. Question. Why do you think that you had this dream? Answer. I think it may have come from the collective dream. I stay away from UFOs as a subject. I don't think it was my dream. It's as if this is how we would feel if invaders came from outer space. Question. If it were playing at a theater, what name would be on the marquee? Answer. Soul's pain. From now on, life will be oppressive. It is after these initial sections of the interview that the interviewer introduces the reading back by saying the following. Now I am going to read the comments made by your characters back to you. I will follow this with a reframing of what they have said to you as a way to hopefully help you hear the interview more deeply now that you are no longer immersed in the interview itself. Question. If one character had something especially important to tell you, which would it be? Answer. The tall person who was so non-emotional and was there with a mission to conquer us. He was not relating to us. Reframing. This particular way you can approach your life is non-emotional. It feels like it has a mission to conquer you. It feels like it does not relate to who you are. Commentary. A direct experience with the difference between pre-personal and normal emotionality and abstract objectivity. It is not that one is better than the other, but learning to recognize both, in addition to rationality, and knowing the time and place for the manifestation of each. So we have the pre-personal emotional perspective of the dreamer, and then we have this abstract objective aspect of this extraterrestrial man who is being interviewed. Question: Man, would you please tell me what you look like and what you are doing? Answer: Everything is new. I'm not familiar with any of this. Reframing: This perspective finds you and your world to be new, novel. Commentary: Perhaps this is a statement of how divorced the transpersonal, the realm of our emerging potentials, can be from our normal waking dramas and concerns. Question: What do you like most about yourself? What are your strengths? Answer: I'm powerful. I can do anything. Look at me. I'm here. Reframing: This perspective is a powerful framing of reality that can do anything, even come into your life from another realm. Commentary: An affirmation of the power of transformation to enter into the realm of waking identity. Question: What do you dislike most about yourself? Do you have weaknesses? What are they? Answer: My weaknesses are that my flesh is not forever. I really haven't thought about that. I just see me going and doing when I focus. I'm very determined. I feel like I am invincible. Reframing: The weakness of this unknown way of approaching life is that it is not immortal, although it has not considered that previously. It is very determined and does whatever it wants when it decides to focus. It is a perspective that feels invincible. Commentary: Images are intrinsically ephemeral and ad hoc, yet can convey extremely strong intent and power. Question: Man, you are in this person's life experience, correct? Nidra created you, right? Man, what aspect of Nidra do you represent or most closely personify? Answer: I have no idea. Reframing: There are perspectives you can access that are unknown to you. Question: Man, if you could be anywhere you wanted to be and take any form you desired, would you change? If so, how? Answer: With my energy, I can get into any form that I want. I know that I have the ability, but I'm very happy with how I look now. I'm powerful and omnipotent. I am higher than all the creatures that I see. Reframing: This framing of life is able to get into any form that it wants. It knows that it has that ability, but is very happy to be appearing to you as an unknown alien invader that is powerful and omnipotent and higher than any life form in your waking reality. Commentary: This is a good example of how and why a perspective may not choose to change. It is powerful and omnipotent, characteristics of low transpersonal mysticism. It views itself as transcending the awareness of the dreamer. Question: Man, how would you score yourself 0 to 10 in confidence, compassion, wisdom, acceptance, peace of mind, and witnessing, and why? Answer: Confidence, 10. Compassion, 2. I care only about myself, where I come from, and my people. I am here on a mission. Wisdom, 10. I am very intelligent, that's for sure. Acceptance, 5. I accept where I come from and myself. I'm here to explore. I'm here to find out. Inner peace? I don't know. I cannot relate to that. Witnessing, 10. Reframing: This emerging potential is extremely confident, but is not very compassionate. It only cares about itself, the realm that it comes from, and those that exist there. It has entered your life on a mission. This man is highly intelligent and scores 10 in wisdom. He accepts the realm of being that he comes from as well as himself. This perspective has come into your life to explore and learn new things. This perspective does not relate to inner peace and is extremely high in its ability to witness. Commentary. This is a good example of how transpersonal perspectives are not all tense in development, but have particular psychographs. A psychograph is like a bar graph that shows which characteristics one is relatively high or low in. In the case of this perspective, it is high in confidence, wisdom, and witnessing, low in compassion, and moderate in acceptance, and unknown in inner peace. We can surmise that becoming this perspective amplifies the characteristics of confidence, wisdom, and witnessing in the dreamer's awareness, while de-emphasizing compassion. This is not an unusual combination for emerging potentials to express, and many of these emerging potentials that are interviewed view us as being too compassionate and not confident and witnessing enough. This is difficult for many people who cannot conceive of the possibility of being too compassionate. Question. Man, if you scored 10s in all 6 of these qualities, would you be different? If so, how? Answer. I don't want to be different. I need to be the way I am. I cannot relate to those other qualities. I would be one of those creatures, perhaps. I see them as less evolved than myself. Reframing. This perspective does not want to be different than it is. It needs to be the way that it is in your life. It does not relate to those other qualities. If it did, it would be like you, and it doesn't want to do that. It sees you as less evolved than itself. Commentary. This is another good example of how and why a perspective may not choose to change. It wants to be heard, recognized, and respected as it is, for what it is. In this case, a change is viewed as a move from transpersonal characteristics to personal ones, devolution. Note that this perspective insists that it is relatively transpersonal. That is, it includes the perspective of the dreamer because it is part of her, yet transcends her perspective by way of the competencies that she lacks. Question. How would the life of the person who created you, Nedra, be different if she naturally scored high in all 6 of these qualities all the time? Answer. I don't care how she scores. Reframing. This perspective does not care how much you express core qualities of your life compass. Commentary. This is a reflection of the lack of compassion by this and many interviewed characters. It is an indifference that is perhaps a reflection that these perspectives are not born, do not die, do not have to eat, are not interested in status or being accepted. They do, however, generally care about being heard and respected, and they are often powerful and confident. This indifference means that many of these perspectives are difficult to relate to and are experienced as threatening because they are so other than our normal waking experience and desires. Question. If you could live the life of Nedra, how would you live it differently? Answer. If Nedra saw the world as I see it, she would see it as a whole. It would be a good skill to develop. She would be able to elevate herself to see things as we do. She could travel as we travel. That would allow her to see and experience the infinite. We are here to see if these creatures can evolve, to see if they are worth our time. I don't know if Nedra is worth our time. Maybe it is too vast for her. We want to see if it is proper for them to get into a different way of seeing life. We don't know if they are so afraid that this fear will cause more harm. If they don't want it our way, fine. Reframing. If you were able to see your life the way this emerging potential sees it, you would see it as a whole. Learning to see your life in such a way would be a good skill to develop. You would be able to elevate yourself to see things in a similar way and to travel between realms of being within yourself. This would allow you to see and experience the infinite. This is a very foreign perspective that has come into your life to see if you can evolve, to see if you are worth its time. Maybe its consciousness is too vast for yourself. This worldview wants to see if it is proper for you to get into a different way of seeing life. It does not know if you are so afraid that this way of seeing life will cause more harm. If you don't want to experience life in a similar way, fine. Commentary. We see that the perception of threat and invasion has been transformed into a perception of integration, freedom, transpersonal access, and evolution. Notice that the perspective is not sure that interaction is worthwhile, that this dreamer, and humans in general, are capable of waking up. It is also a matter of one's capability of moving beyond one's fears, or not. Question. Man, if you could live this person's waking life for her today, would you handle her 3 life issues differently? If so, how? Answer. I don't know what to do with her health. I am there to take health from them. A lot of them will be paralyzed by their fear. They are falling like flies. If they weren't, we would invite them into this place that we have prepared for the fearless. We have this place underneath the sea, very well camouflaged. That's how we study everything around us. Every now and then we fly out and some people see us. The earth is not forever. These human beings are a threat to the rest of us. If they destroy themselves, it will create space for a new beginning. Reframing. This perspective does not know what to do about your health. It is here to take from you. Parts of yourself will react by being paralyzed by your fear and disappear. Those parts of you that do not are invited into this place that it has prepared for the fearless parts of yourself that exist below your awareness, very well hidden from you. That's how this perspective studies you and your life. Every now and then you catch a glimpse of this internal but foreign reality. Your reality is not forever. Your consciousness is a threat to this worldview and parts of yourself that are like it. If you destroy yourself, it will create space for a new beginning. Commentary. Fear causes death, and this perspective is indifferent to that death. Access to this perspective is only possible if one overcomes their fears. Notice that this perspective can be viewed both as a self-aspect to good effect, because that causes ownership of both fear and power. And at the same time, it can be viewed as autonomous, as not self, or self with capital S, and wholly transcendent. This is also good because what it does is affirm the autonomy of the other and otherness as a reality, thereby preventing a descent into solipsism and in taking responsibility for that which it is inappropriate to take responsibility for. Question. What 3 life issues would you focus on if you were in charge of Nedra's life? Answer. I don't know or care about her health or her career. I think she should focus on us and communication through her mind. If she was willing to go that way, she will wake up to how we want humanity to grow. If she was willing to go toward communicating as we do, she will awaken to her potential. We are here to see how awakened they can be. She sees us as Nazis. We are very quick, clean, and well put together. That is reflected in how we dress. We are here to study them, to learn how their brains work, so that we can save this part of the universe. Reframing. This perspective does not know what to do about your health or your career. It thinks you should focus on getting in touch with these new and foreign ways of approaching life and on communication through your mind. If you are willing to do so, you will wake up to how these emerging potentials want you to grow. If you are willing to go toward communicating in the ways that emerging potentials do, you will awaken to your potential. This emerging potential and others like it come to you to see how awakened you can be. You see these potentials as Nazis. They are quick, clean, and well put together. This is reflected in how they look to you. They have come to you to learn how your brain works so they can save you and your reality. Commentary. We have a verification and amplification of many of the previous themes in this interview, which demonstrates the consistency and congruency of the worldview of the vast majority of interviewed emerging potentials. We see indifference, a recommendation that attention and awareness needs to be shifted toward building a relationship with transpersonal emerging potentials, such as this one. Notice the theme of waking up, very common to many interviewed perspectives. The payoff or reason to make this shift is the awakening to one's own unrecognized, unexpressed, non-manifested potentials. There is a recognition that the normal reaction to the transpersonal is fear, which causes a misperception of the function and nature of imagery. Question: in what life situations would it be most beneficial for this person to imagine that they are you and act as you would? Answer: I can get into these creatures if I want to. We want to influence them so that they evolve toward enlightenment. When Nedra feels totally not connected, if they were to tap into that connection, they would be fearless. All of these creatures would learn how to be fearless. She wouldn't be afraid of other creatures and other possibilities of life. She would be in a different state of consciousness. This world would not be so much into those lower energies of fear and anger. She would be one of those evolving into the new world. She would be enlightened. She would be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Reframing. This emerging potential can get into your consciousness if it wants to. It wants to influence you so that you can evolve toward enlightenment. It wants to get into your consciousness when you feel totally not connected. If you were to tap into that connection, you would feel totally fearless. You wouldn't feel afraid of other perspectives or other possibilities of life. You would be in a different state of consciousness. You would not be so much into those lower frequencies of fear and anger. You would be one of those evolving into a new consciousness. You would be enlightened. You would be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Commentary. Notice how this interview has changed from fear of the unknown, perceived as malicious, to a reframing as a movement toward enlightenment, integration, partnership, connection, and the transcendence of fear. There is also the integration of transpersonal states of awareness with normal, everyday awareness. What is ironic is how such statements, which sound like they could be channeled transmissions from spiritual masters, are tossed off and quickly forgotten. Question: why do you think that you are in this person's life? Answer: to awaken her and have her face whatever it is that she feels. to see what she is made of. I think she is becoming fearless. I am here to see the whole thing. If she happens to tap into my consciousness, that would be good. Reframing. This emerging potential is in your life so that you can awaken and have you face whatever it is that you feel. It is to see what you are made of. This perspective thinks that you are becoming fearless. It has come into your consciousness to see this process. If you happen to tap into its consciousness, that would be good. Commentary. A very good example of how interviewing tells us things that we already know, but ignore, forget, or minimize, perhaps pushed aside by more pressing waking concerns, relationships, and more intense emotions. It is also a good example of how interviewed emerging potentials are a mixture of indifference and patient, persistent knocking on the door of our awareness, reminding us that they are there, despite our misperception and fear. Question. How is this person most likely to ignore what you are saying to them? Answer. She would regard me as a fantasy. She doesn't want to believe in non-ordinary creatures. She's terrified. She thinks that we will destroy everything. We are here to destroy ignorance. Enough is enough. Reframing. You're most likely to ignore what this emerging potential is saying to you by regarding it as a fantasy. You don't want to believe in non-ordinary perspectives. You're terrified. You think non-ordinary perspectives will destroy your reality and destroy you. This emerging potential and those like it come into your experience to destroy your ignorance. Enough is enough. Commentary. Again, the themes are both awakening and addressing the fears that keep us small and unevolved. It is also about challenging our chronic misperceptions and the ignorance that creates them. Question. Why do you think Nedra had this dream? Answer. I don't know. Reframing. This perspective says that it does not know why you had this dream. Commentary. Ha 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 ha. After being told again and again exactly why Nedra had this dream by the character claims it does not know. This implies that this is Nedra not knowing, not the character. My interpretation is that this is an excellent example of the power of denial, repression, and a host of other defense mechanisms. It is why I have a video on defense mechanisms and why it is essential that we learn to recognize them, our cognitive distortions and biases, and our logical fallacies, if we are to get out of our own way and wake up. This completes the reading back. And remember, it's only the reframing that's read back. The person's already done the questions and answers. There's no commentary, there's just the reading back. In this example, afterlife issues, the telling of the dream, and the providing of associations to it, we had these 4 sections that we worked through. First came the repetition of the interview in question, followed by the answer given by the interviewed character during the actual interview. These questions and answers were included to provide you with the context to understand what the reading back is about and to allow you to compare the reading back to the answers given by the interviewed character. It's not the way you actually do it. You just do the reframing after the interview. Next came the reframing, or a rewording of what the interviewed character has said as if these were things that the subject is telling himself or herself. This is to help to integrate what has been said through the taking of ownership and responsibility for what has been said. The interview stops before the interview is complete. We don't include sections addressing what the subject heard and what they want to do about applying any recommendations, or it doesn't include the feedback from others. That is because these sections are not relevant to the reading back, as its purpose is to help the subject hear what has been said to them by the interviewed character. Reading back interviews is a skill set that has to be practiced to learn and do well. The major things to remember are that you are attempting to help the subject do two things: hear themselves and hear the perspective that was interviewed with new ears so that they can own and integrate what has been said. With that in mind, always be aware of your natural tendency to add your own interpretations to reading back. Here are some of the key reframing phrases from the above. This particular way you can it feels like it has, it is, it does not. This perspective finds, is, feels, needs, does not. This way of This reframing knows, finds, feels. This emerging potential is, sees. You would be able to, you would develop, you would not, or this worldview wants to see, There are plenty of opportunities, of course, for the interviewer to jump into rescuer role, interjecting interpretations or attempting to do more than simply ask the interviewing questions and then read them back. To some extent, this is difficult to avoid. I certainly added my own interpretations in some of my reframings. Nevertheless, we can try and we can improve and get ourselves and our interpretations as interviewers more out of the way with time and practice. It is worth the effort, as I think you can see from this example. The reading back significantly expands the depth and value of the entire interviewing process. It is worth the effort, as I think you can see from this example. The reading back significantly expands the depth and value of the entire interviewing process. Professional therapists in particular have a difficult time with this because they have been trained to provide interpretations, called diagnoses, and then offer advice. Interviewers do offer interpretations and advice in IDL, both regarding the application of interviews and in response to requests from the subject, but after the interview, not during it. Because the reframing of what has been said requires some interpretation, it is subject to the approval and corrections of the character being interviewed. It is good to stop every now and then and to check with the character. Man, did I paraphrase what you said correctly? Do you have anything to add or subtract? You will find that by the conclusion of the interview, your subjects will usually be able to shift immediately back into the perspective of their interviewed character, in this case, Nedra become the man, and answer questions directed to it, such as asking the man if the reframings are appropriate, then shifting immediately back into Nedra's normal waking perspective. This is a consequence of the repeated immersion of the subject in the perspective of the interviewed character, again and again over the course of the interview. What this man, this perspective that has been interviewed, has said is not New Age woo. There's nothing here about spirituality, all being in divine order, positive thinking, or love as the answer. Compassion isn't given as the answer either. There's nothing here about forgiveness, meditation, shamanism, developing psychic abilities, or 10 steps to enlightenment. There is no claim that what the perspective is asking of the dreamer is easy or fun. There is, however, a very adamant stance that this is not only very much worth doing, but is essential. This is the perspective that generates the framing of IDL as a yoga. Think back about the subject's original associations to the dream. Nedra said, I think it may have been a collective rather than a personal dream. I stay away from UFOs as a subject. I don't think it was my dream. It's as if this is how we would feel if invaders came from outer space. I think it may have been a collective rather than a personal dream. In light of the reading back, what does that now imply? To answer that question, think back over what has been said and consider this interview as a reframing and a commentary on humanity's relationship to its fears, to the unknown, and on what attitude is recommended for humanity, for the species, going forward. Also consider what this interview says about the prevailing collective mythology of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Interesting, yes? Notice how many times "I don't know" or "I don't care" were repeated, and how this expression of ignorance or indifference in no way blocked or interfered with the effectiveness of the interview. Very unlike how such statements block thought and interaction in waking life. My interpretation is that the dreamer projects her fears of invasion, the unknown, and loss of control onto the extraterrestrial, and this shows up in some of his answers. Nedra projects on him a desire for conquest and Nazi-like characteristics, not so unlike the West is currently projecting onto its enemies, implying that this is both a personal and a species-wide collective tendency. We can vividly appreciate how the microcosm of personal psychology, in this case in a nightmare of invasion, is mirrored in collective conspiracies, paranoias, and delusions, such as fears of extraterrestrial invasions, reptilian mythologies, Russiagate, Corona conspiracies, and the never-ending ramping up of fears of Russian and Chinese aggression. The responses also indicate that from the interviewed perspective, these fears block evolution into the transpersonal in personal and collective contexts, in both. The way to get around this is to communicate with one's own mind and involves mental focus with alternative perspectives and emerging potentials. The practice of IDL as a dream yoga then is framed as an antidote to a fundamental barrier to personal and collective evolution. Thanks for watching. See you next time.